Welcome to the Political Revolution podcast. Tonight, we will be speaking with Christopher Witt Diamond, singer, songwriter, and unapologetic progressive and member of the House of Public Discourse Forum, whose rock group provided help with our background music tonight. Chris and I are just two laid-back progressives talking about politics and other matters today. We will be touching on Trump's flight from New York to the Sunshine State, Beto, and the current race dynamics. So sit back, grab yourself a beverage, roll yourself a fatty, and let's talk politics. Her and Johnny starts now. What's up, Chris? What's going on with Trump in New York, man?
Well, it's a good day for New York, but it's going to be a bad day for Florida, or maybe the other way around, depending on which party you're in.
Yeah. So what's going on? Trump's. Let me tell you what I've got. I'm gonna. This is off of Vanity Fair. It says Trump is moving. Trump is moving to Florida because New York was mean to him. I think there's a little more than that. What's going on, man?
Well, if you call being mean to you, like, possibly setting you up for a criminal case in which you're going to end up doing 20 years for tax fraud. See, the problem is that the tax information that he used to do his federal income taxes was all falsified with signatures from people that said that the signature was correct, but not the actual document. In other words, he forged his own tax preparer's name to actually do some of it. I mean, this guy's been a crook for so long. His sister was a federal judge who signed off on a bunch of really, let's talk about, malfeasance, corruption, I mean, the list goes on and on. Anyway, what happened is he would undervalue his taxes when he wanted to get a reduction, and he would overvalue them when he wanted to get a loan. That's called fraud.
Right.
That's called fraud. That's a federal felony. Yeah.
Okay. Well, Chris, cue us all in, and this is a very helpful conversation, and we're glad that you're our first guest here on the Political Revolution podcast, and we're awful glad you're here.
Thank you. I'm we've
known from the jump street, with Trump hiding. Correct me if I'm wrong here. Is he not the only president at this point in time that's never released his taxes for the American people? I know they've hemmed and hawed about it, but everyone has actually shown theirs except him. Am I wrong in that?
Well, that's not the entire problem. The problem is that he promised to do so. Told everybody that he was having an audit, but as soon as his audit was done, he was going to. But we found out later that even when you're under audit, you can still release your taxes. So that was the first, major lie. The second thing is there's no way he's ever going to release his taxes because it's going to show. There's a couple people that went through this in the New York Times, but they found a couple bumps in his tax returns where all of a sudden 50, 60, 70 million just kind of hit the books at one time. Now, I'm pretty sure that came from our little friend Vladimir Putin in Russia and a few others. So the actual origin of where this money came from is why he's not going to release it. In other words, just the fact that, Johnny Deutsch and all the rest of his friends say he's been laundering money through his casinos for the last 30 years, that's kind of beside the point. The real fact of the matter is that he's a fraud. He lost $1 billion, $10 million a year for 10 years. He's a horrible businessman. Everything he touches, he's the opposite of King Midas. Everything he touches turns to crap. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where Midas turned to gold. It's exactly the opposite.
Yeah. Well, look, man, we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come right back, and we're going to talk about a few other things. So how's that sound? You got a few moments?
I've got plenty of time. Today's events, it's been a burner of a day, so get back to me.
All right, man. We'll be back with you in just a short.
You're inside the Progressive Talk Zone with House of Public Discourse founder and host, Johnny Hill.
Hey, Chris, man, the president thinks he's been treated worse than almost anyone else in New York history. What's up with that, bro?
Well, I don't think he's been exactly, tarred and feathered and ridden out of town on a rail. I mean, if we go back to Tammany Hall and some of those characters, I'd say that Donald Trump has been able to, slide his little greasy little self out of the way quite a few times. He's beat a lot of stuff that should have come down on him. But the fact of it is that Trump was, holding on to his dad's legacy. But also, you have to remember, the construction industry in New York is completely dominated by the cement pourers, and that's the five families. That's mafia. He's been dealing with, the Genovese and the Gambino people. I mean, Roy Cohn, for God's sake, was the family attorney who was the, personal counsel of Roy Cohn. Mr. McCarthy, Senator McCarthy, Roy Cohn is one of the most corrupt people until he was finally disbarred. I mean, he was this little viper that was, nursed at our breast. Donald Trump is the, this guy's like a little creature of the night.
Yeah.
Roy Cohn, oh my God. I don't even want to get started here. Please, don't even get me started.
Well, Chris, let's see. Let me get my ducks in a row here. Here's what Vanity Fair said. Why the change of heart about town Trump once declared the best place to live and the center of the world? The most obvious reason for the move, confirmed by a person close to the president, are the tax implications. So here comes taxes. It's tax.
That's just the tip of the iceberg. It's tax fraud that got him on dead to rights. Michael Cohen came in with all the records. I mean, and Cohen's already doing time for a crime that Donald Trump committed as an unindicted co-conspirator. That means Trump is already guilty of a felony. He just hasn't been indicted because of that piece of paper from the Department of Justice that says you can't indict a sitting president without going through the whole thing of impeachment and everything else, which is probably a good idea. The fact of it is that we already have a felon in office, because that's why Michael Cohen is doing 3 years. So the other guy that told him to break the law is actually more guilty. So the reason he's getting out of New York is that the governor and the attorney general are coming after him, and they've got enough information and enough documentation to put him away. So he's running down to Mar-a-Lago because in Florida, you don't have any danger of bankruptcy. The way the laws are written down there, it's very flexible. It's very corrupt. That's why he's leaving town. And I'll tell you, they're going to take Trump Tower. They're going to take that tower for the money he owes them. I guarantee you. See if I say if it doesn't come true. I mean, if it doesn't, you can sue me. And that's his favorite line for all the people he's ripped off over the years. I mean, thousands of people he's ripped off. Oh, sue me, he says. And then he spaces it out in court until the people go bankrupt or die. He's just a crook.
And well, Chris, check this out. In the House of Public Discourse, our team, we've pretty much said this from the get-go, basically word for word, what you have just expressed here in a lot of ways. But I want to go on here. Check this out. Vanity Fair goes on to say, in addition, there are also political reasons to move to Florida. A state Trump very much needs to win in 2020. Where he kicked off his reelection campaign with a rally in Orlando. All this
the governor, the attorney general, he's got that girl in his pocket. She's corrupt. He paid her off $25,000, and all of a sudden his case went away. I mean, the attorney general, the woman down there, she's totally corrupt. I mean, Florida stinks to high heaven. Look what they did at Broward County. Even the Democrats, Republicans are even worse.
Well, the thing about it is, Chris, his bottom line, and check this out, he goes, where he doesn't have to contend with the commie liberals like he did in New York. I mean, here we go with the quote unquote, the socialism, the commies, the McCarthyism.
Oh, he's talking about it. Yeah, he's talking about Bernie. Yeah, Bernie Sanders.
And it's the old Southern. It's the old Southern strategy, 101 that we've been used to for years.
Divide and conquer. Sure. No, it's just the scare word. The scare word, socialism. That's why it's so scary that Franklin Delano Roosevelt was elected 4 times and they had to change the election laws in America, because they probably would have put him in the office a couple more terms if they could have. A real, what we call, a New Deal socialist. But this is just the tactics of the people that haven't given Middle America a raise since 1980 when Reagan went into office. The middle class hasn't gotten a raise. Well, they decided to destroy the middle class because the middle class was the bastion of the Democratic Party. They're not totally stupid. They're going, well, if we want to get rid of these Democrats, we'll get rid of their base, the middle class. Destroy the middle class. It's just going to be the rich, which is us, the poor, which is going to be them, and we'll run the show. And it's worked pretty well.
Yeah.
Look at it, no one's gotten a raise in 40 years. I was doing a graph at college. They were doing an economic graph, and I was looking at it, and I was going, well, what's this line on the bottom? I said, is this part of the graph? And they go, no, that is the graph. I said, that's what we've been paid in the last 40 years. It's flatlined. There hasn't been a raise in 40 years. Productivity is up over 1,000%. They're going, yeah, you figured it out. So this is what they did. The productivity went sky high, and, all they did was throw a couple scraps off the table, and that's basically been the end of the middle class. But now,
Chris, you're absolutely right. We're going to take a quick pause for the calls, and then we're going to end up to today's cast talking a little bit. We're going to touch on Beto O'Rourke, drops out of the presidential race.
That happened, 3 hours ago? 3 hours ago, I just heard,
it's pretty recent. And get a little quick rundown. We had spoken earlier, and we're going to discuss those things when we're back here on the Political Revolution podcast. Keep it right here. Check you out in a few.
Sounds great.
All right, man.
You're listening to WHOPD, The Progressive, your source for everything progressive in the House of Public Discourse Radio Network.
Hey, Chris, Beto O'Rourke drops out of the presidential race.
Oh, yeah. About 3 hours ago, I've heard about that. Well, you want to hear what I have to say about that?
Yeah, that's why I asked you, my brother.
All right. Okay, well, I'll tell you. What Beto should do, so because he's got, a couple brain cells still working up there, the punk rockers didn't get everything. What he should do is just go and run for a Senate seat in Texas. I mean, the Austin people love him. Get rid of Ted Cruz, the curse off the face of the earth. Go green, drop the oil money, get rid of the corporations, and wise up. That's my take.
Well, I'm telling you, I'm not far from agreeing with just about every last word you just said.
He's a good speaker. It does he's a little bit of an opportunist, but still, we can still use someone like that.
There was some things we can't. I'll be the first to raise my hand and say at the front of the class that, sometimes little things bother me about genuineness and stuff, and I had some issues with that, but I agree that I think he genuinely is a pretty decent fella.
Yeah, it's not his fault he's got a girlfriend that's a billionaire. We can't crucify him for that, can we?
Well, there's a whole lot of people that wouldn't, that's for sure.
We can't really, look down our nose at him just because he's filthy, bloody rich,
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm sure his heart's with the proletariat, the hoi polloi.
Yeah, but really, in our conversations here, and it's been a pleasure. this whole, we've seen so many people, they're starting to drop out like flies now, but, we were talking about that dynamic. You want to touch on that a little bit? I think you bring a very,
people were asking me, why are there so many people running in this Democratic race? I mean, obviously, they don't mean all of them to be president, but what I said was, they did this, their strategy from the get-go was to strip voters away from Bernie Sanders, like Kamala Harris. That's supposed to steal the black vote from them. Pete Buttigieg, right? That's supposed to steal the gay vote, the LGBT people. That's supposed to steal that block of voters from Bernie Sanders. And then we had the other guy here. Looking at Biden. Biden was supposed to get the older, kind of sort of the sit-at-home, sort of retiree crowd. And then we had Beto. Beto was supposed to get the millennials away from Bernie. So all this was done basically to try to steal as many voters away from Bernie Sanders as possible. And, not a bad strategy. It's not going to work, but, they had to go with what they have, with the mud.
Yeah, there's no doubt we're in a constant battle with, we in the House of Public Discourse, we call it for what it is. It's neoliberalism.
Oh boy. It's the mass media in the pocket of big business, and they don't, Bernie Sanders to them is like, kryptonite for a Superman, although, it's not really Superman. It's more like what the just deserves, a little bit of justice showing up for Wall Street. Those guys have never seen justice.
Right.
That's the problem. Yeah, well, because Bernie hasn't taken any corporate money up at D.C. for 40 years. He's a virgin in a whorehouse. I mean, look at him, there's nobody who's even close.
That's right. That's how I see it.
Because there's really no other way to look at it.
The polls, it's the polls. The polls really don't really matter to Bernie supporters, not really anymore. We know about these polls. We look at how many people.
Fred isn't really honest. They're not going for the under 30. Under 25 voters at all.
Independents aren't being called, not on a large scale, they're not.
Yeah, no, this is all twist. I keep seeing Bernie just a couple points, below one way or the other. I'm not. Yeah. I don't buy it. I'd say that he's being doubled down at least. On some of them. Some of the polls are accurate though, but this thing in Iowa, where, right now Mr. Biden is out of the race. He's technically out of the race, which means it's working.
Right, Chris. And I don't mean to interrupt you, but let's put on the break right there. But let me tell you this. I think you bring a very good perspective to this. Bernie Sanders rally in New York City. Michael Moore knocks it out the park with his speech.
Absolutely.
AOC was in full effect. She was in full effect. What was it? 50 million I didn't realize she had that many followers on Twitter.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not a Twitter guy.
Every Latina in America loves this Cortez. She's really the voice of the voiceless. She's really like, their major player for the Latina community, though, the one that's been at the receiving end of all this immigration nonsense, this racism,
Oh my God, she was I know for a fact, I happen to have tentacles that reach down into the far right world through family, and they've been demonizing AOC from the get-go. She was a monster, a socialist, a commie.
Ridiculous. She comes out of one of the most underprivileged parts of New York. She's up there in Queens. This is a working class girl. When she heard of Bernie Sanders, she was a bloody waitress. They call that a socialist or a communist? They don't know their ass from their elbow. They don't know whether they're a Twitter or
well, that's exactly correct. But you know what? It's very interesting to see something that we've been noticing for quite a while is that with progressive issues and progressive policies are popular when people have a chance to see them for what they are and to get a good understanding of how they benefit not just themselves, but the community and the neighborhood as a whole.
That's exactly it, because politics is essentially local. It's your own school board. It's your own, representation. That's the idea of representational democracy. This isn't a, spectator sport. This demands participation. That's the sign of patriotism for someone that cares enough, to go out there and get involved. There are no, this isn't a spectator sport. You know what I mean? Not a real democracy.
Right. Yeah. We're going to wrap this up. It's been a real pleasure having you on the podcast.
Absolutely. I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled. Really, it's been great talking to you. Anytime.
All right. Well, we're going to be back to discuss other issues. Everyone have a nice evening. Thank you for tuning in with us. This is old school, Johnny. It's like radio for me, but everyone have a nice evening, and we'll see you on the flip side.